Let's reflect a little bit this evening on the notion and the value of honesty or truthfulness. We understand and we believe that honesty is a good thing. I think most of us, all of us, I hope, would say it is important to be honest. The truth will set you free. It's probably something that we are taught as very young children, that always to be honest in your dealings with others, with yourself, and your relationship with God and various things. And, it's a very, very important value that's instilled in us from a very, very young age. You guys were taught by your parents to be honest, right? They're right over here, so don't lie. Okay? Yeah, they're nodding their heads. Yeah, so it's an affirmative. We get this, and so we understand this. So, honesty, yes, we get that as a concept and such, but human beings sometimes, particularly when we're asked maybe a direct question that puts us into a little bit of a tight corner or a tight spot, or we don't necessarily want to give a completely brutally honest answer because we don't necessarily want to hurt someone's feelings, we may sort of kind of go into that gray area of choosing our words very carefully and saying something we want to convey without it maybe sounding exactly like we want to convey. You get me? Okay. So like, for example, Donna. Donna's my aunt, so she's going to be honest with me, right? Do you like my vestment? Yes. Okay. So she's honest. If she would have said something like, well, it's unique, that would have been a little different, wouldn't it? That would have been kind of, no, I really don't like it. But she's not necessarily going to say that so brutally. All right? So human beings kind of get into that gray area of, we sort of kind of couch our words just a little bit. I was thinking of this earlier this week, particularly as I was reflecting on our first reading where Jeremiah is brutally honest with the Lord. You duped me, and I allowed myself to be duped. Listen to that word. It's like, tricked or manipulated or, under false pretenses. You made me do this or you convinced me to do this or whatever. But he says he was duped. That sounds like such a harsh thing, especially to say to the Lord, But those are the words that Jeremiah uses. But let's put this into a little bit of a context. Jeremiah was chosen to be a prophet. Prophets are usually not very popular because they bring a message that people generally do not want to hear. Particularly in Jeremiah's day and age, the Israelite people were doing things that were contrary to the covenant of the Lord, and the Lord was very upset with them. And so he sends messengers basically as a warning and as a guide. You need to change your ways. This is what you're doing wrong. And, people don't like to necessarily be told what they're doing wrong. They don't like to be corrected. Especially if something feels good to them, it gives them pleasure, or they kind of enjoy the course that they're on, even if it is maybe self-destructive for themselves, or if it's destructive for someone else. They don't like necessarily course corrections. That's no different than in today's day and age. Parents have to do that with their children all the time, and, other authorities in our society try to kind of lead us and guide us and steer us, but we don't necessarily want to follow. But Jeremiah is chosen. You go and you do this. And Jeremiah tries to come up with every excuse in the book not to go. I'm too young. The Lord says, no, you can go. You're not too young. Well, I really don't have the words. Well, I'll give you the words then. And he comes up with a myriad of other excuses. If you read the first part of the book of Jeremiah, he comes up with all these reasons why he should not do this. But once he surrenders and submits and says, okay, fine, I'll do this, then he's in it wholeheartedly. Yet, what does he encounter? Mockery, division, violence. People make fun of him for what he's doing. They try to put him to death because of the words that he says. And so hence Jeremiah says, you duped me. But I allowed myself to be duped as well. But then he continues on with that and says, but I believe so strongly in what I'm doing, and I believe that your words are true, that it's like a fire that burns in me, that it cannot be contained. It's a similar kind of setup to what we hear in our gospel today. Last week, we heard the story of Jesus on the mountaintop with his disciples saying, well, who do you say that I am? And Peter speaks for the others and says, well, you are the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God. And Jesus affirms that wholeheartedly, and acknowledges it and lavishes praise on Peter. You have the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and, this is a great thing. And if you think of the disciples, what they've experienced so far is large crowds of people, and people love Jesus, and, all these different things that are happening. Sure, there's some people that are opposed to him, but by and large, it's been a pretty positive experience. It's easy to hitch your wagon to that and to go down the road with Jesus. You are the Christ, the Son of God. This is going to be a good thing, and we're going to ride in on his coattails, and we are going to be in power and glory and acclamation, and people are going to love us as much as they love this guy. But then today, Jesus says, by the way, if you're going to follow me, this is what's going to happen. We're heading to Jerusalem, and what's going to happen in Jerusalem is that. Well, that's a little bit different, a little bit too much for Peter. And a little too much honesty, if you will. He doesn't really necessarily want to hear that. God forbid that would ever happen to you. And that's where Jesus has to be brutally honest with Peter. Look, you're thinking not as God does, but as human beings do. If you really want to follow me, you have to pick up your cross daily. And you have to accept the sufferings of the world. You have to accept the rejection. You have to accept what comes your way. And it's not always going to be pretty. That's a good testament for life, isn't it? Life sometimes is very difficult. Matthew's community, who he's writing to in the early church, was suffering tremendous oppression. And people were being put to death simply because they believed in this Jesus. And the words that Jesus speaks, that Matthew puts forth, are meant to be words of encouragement. No matter what you are encountering, don't give up. Don't lose faith. Don't lose hope. Now, we're pretty blessed in our day and age. When you came in here to this particular building, this space today to celebrate the sacrament, to worship freely, there wasn't somebody out there taking your name, going to report you to a government official that you came to this place